Ladies and gentlemen, it is the holidays, and I am welcoming you to the Exceptional Conservative Show live from the nation's capital. We are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation, first to the Republican and then the Socialists. Yours truly, the Exceptional One, on location here in the nation's capital. We are live, and as always, no matter how hard you try, there will always be a flaw, but it's one that can be overcome. This is our big week regarding worldview. We will be talking about worldview. What exactly is your worldview? Your worldview determines exactly who oppresses you and whom you oppress. It determines how you see how government should be and how you are to be governed. Simply put, whether you're a Frederick Douglass or Plato, Jesus, or simply the exceptional one, Ken McClinton, literally, how we think through, how we understand this world, greatly impacts exactly how the world impacts us and how we impact this world. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity throughout the course of the years as we are settling down and going into year number, I don't know, it's just number 5 or 6 or something like that. We've been on the air for a while. And I believe that we are coming close to doing our 1,000th show. It'll be sometime in the middle of March, sometime like that. But we've been on the air for a long, long time. And a lot of people will say, well, what impact have you had, Mr. McClinton? What have you done for the community? Well, one of the things I've done is encourage critical thinking. Critical thinking is essential to us determining what exactly works and what doesn't work in our society, and what doesn't work in our society should be absconded with, should be destroyed, should be left behind. And what does work should be implicated, executed, and made severely rewarding to each and every human being. Literally, I really believe that it's time for us to rethink what we think in urban America. And I think the Exceptional Conservative Show has been one of the profound leaders in making people rethink urban America, especially urban American downloaders on the socialist, Marxist, utopian side of the political spectrum. I want to thank Mary Brockman for being in the chat room with us today. Mary Brockman is the bouncer. If you diss her, you diss me, and you will be dismissed from the SHR Media Live chat room, which is at theexceptionalconservativeshow.com. And as well, Mrs. Biggs, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and watching via live stream and Ustream. Love you so much. We had our 17th wedding anniversary celebrated yesterday, and we had a wonderful Saturday night where we attended the Irish Carol. Yes, the Irish Carol in Uptown Washington, D.C., Northwest Washington. Loaded with great common speak. Sailors would be proud, I tell you. But certainly took a unusual concept around the whole idea of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. We really enjoyed that, even though my wife found it difficult to stay awake through most of it. But she had a good time nevertheless. But I can tell you that she had exactly a wonderful time on Sunday, because on Sunday, Amy Grant they met and they greeted each other, and you know what girls do when they. I don't know if they did the scream or not. I don't think they did the scream, but Blanca Vega had written a letter to Miss Peaches, Miss Biggs, um, regarding Sharnice Milton, and they conveyed via email. And so when they finally got a chance to meet each other in person, you should have just seen the great joy that was upon their faces. Just immense was the joy. And so it was a pleasure watching all of that come to pass. And of course, we've had dinner. I want to thank also uh, Channel 9 for coming out and interviewing us after church on Sunday at our church at Living Word Church in Southwest Washington, D.C., in remembrance of Sharnice. I want to also thank Jackie Benson, who has been covering the story and making it very prolific in DC news media. I want to thank you sincerely. And also Andrew Lightman, who's working behind the scenes at Community News and encouraging people to cover the story and get it right. And so we're hopeful. We're very hopeful that there will be some success that comes from all of this. Our prayers are not just for our case, for Sharnice in terms of a homicide, but also for the over 4,000 homicides in the District of Columbia since Shonda Smith, who is the CEO of Murder Mistaken Incorporated, who hosted an event that we attended, and I'll tell you all about that in just one moment. But there are over 4,000 cold cases in the District of Columbia since about 1996, somewhere around there. And quite certainly, you're probably thinking with 4,000 active cold cases that people want to live. Where there is injustice, people do not. Where there is justice, people want to work. Where there is injustice, people do not. Where there is justice, people like to worship. Where there is injustice, people do not. And so when the city fails to subsidize justice rather than injustice, well, by golly, you start sending messages out to people all across the land. And it shows up. It really does. And I know a lot of people are jumping up and down. Well, we've had an increase in the census tracts, man. Lots of people moving to D.C. We're building condos all up. Yeah, wonderful. Building straight up does not mean that people really want to move here. All right? Simple as that. You're losing institutional wherewithal. You're losing people who really, really want to be in Washington, D.C. and change D.C. But that's what you're probably fighting against. You don't want D.C. to be changed. It works in a corrupt fashion right now. But over 4,000 cases. We have 8 cold case detectives to work on those. 58 detectives in general to work on cases that are active throughout the course of the year. In fact, it doesn't become a cold case, according to what I've heard, unless it goes 4 years without actually being resolved. Something to that effect. I don't understand why it keeps cutting out, and hopefully it'll come back. Maybe it's because we're getting larger audiences of people who are tuning in and listening to us. We'll work on that. But how the way we look at this particular scenario and situation with such a large number, 4,000 cases, 8 cold case detectives, 58 detectives that are currently working on cases that are 4 years or younger, which basically means somewhere in the area of about 400 to 500 cases that have been unresolved. Literally, you with making certain that you suffer. And so we went to a Christmas party this weekend, Mrs. Biggs and myself. And at that Christmas party, we had the great opportunity. It was Murder Mistaken Incorporated. If you go to their Facebook page, and I'll put that in the chat roll for you all to like, uh, Shonda Smith did a wonderful job putting the event together and making certain that um, others could attend, and we really, really appreciated all of that. My wife and I shocked and surprised everyone because uh, we had told Shonda Smith about 3 weeks ago that we were planning on attending. About 2 weeks ago, I informed her that, um, by golly, we were not going to just attend, but we were going to make sure that there was a Santa Claus and a Mrs. Santa Claus to attend. So she was ecstatic and excited. Then the following week back, we advised her that the news would be there. Channel 4 News would be coming. And so she was extremely excited. I mean, you don't normally get this type of attention for this particular type of event, which was an event where we were uh, showing some love to the children of homicide victims, unresolved homicides in District of Columbia. Didn't see too many politicians at that event. Bet you they'll be there next year, won't they? Yeah, sure they will. But my wife and I attended. We came as our own person first, and people were kind of like, "Hey, how you doing?" Had the down look, you know. So sorry to hear about your daughter, and place. This is normally where the hardcore ruffians, the individuals who are on the worst of circumstances in their life, who are being caught up on drugs and caught up on alcohol. And we talk about teenagers, prostitution, in the criminal justice system. This is normally where they go to receive not only counseling, but support as a mechanism to get them back into the economy in general. Well, my wife and I attended that particular event. We found a place where we could change up. And when we came out, it's amazing how this happens. No one recognized it was us. Not even my wife, who did not wear a Santa Claus beard, no one recognized who she was. It's amazing. It's simply amazing what happens when you're Santa Claus. And so when we came out, all of a sudden, the personnel came running over. They wanted to take photographs with Santa Claus. It was like we had brightened just their day in attendance. And security personnel came over. They all gave us hugs, and they were, and you'll see some of the pictures at Murder Mistaken, and also at the Ken McClinton website if you go to Facebook page if you go to it. But literally, there were crowds of people that came around us. We sat down, we were greeted. Santa Claus, little girls and little boys were joyous. You could see smiles coming on their face. When we walked in the first time, they were not smiling, they weren't dancing, they were kind of miserable. But we came in, and all of a sudden, the excitement came into the room. Santa Claus got up and did the wobble. Santa Claus also did the whip and the nay nay. It's wonderful. And does God exist? Um, but ministers, ministers. How shameful it was to know that there was one minister there outside of myself who did the opening prayer and did the prayer over the food. How shameful. No choirs to sing in Christmas hymns. We had a great DJ. Brother was good. You know what I'm saying? Good. Love you, man. But ladies and gentlemen, where were they? Where are the ministers who say that they can't wait to start their own church? They feel God's calling them to something bigger and better. Why aren't you serving those with great need where they are when they need you? Why must they come to your church to receive your blessing and your anointing? Why can't your church come out of those four walls and serve them? So next year I'll be working on that. I guarantee you I will be working on that. There is no doggone way that place should be empty of the fellowship of the saints and the worship of Jesus Christ at Christmas time. At Christmas time. Ministers, please, in 2016, don't walk up to me talking about you can't wait till you start a church. What you need to do is when you walk up to me, ask me where I can point you to make it happen. To actually get a smile on a child's face who just found out 3 weeks ago that their daddy is dead, ain't coming back, and mama's got to figure out how to raise 4 people. Smith, the CEO of Murder Mistaken, would you all do me a favor? Like her page if you come to the SHR uh, Media Live Center at the exceptionalconservative.show.com. Like her page, encourage her. Support is good.
Hello, my name is Nancy here, a politics.com contributor. So I wanted to briefly discuss a clip that was forwarded to me today on Twitter. It was a clip from CNN, and it was an anchor and 2 guests talking about the color of Jesus and Santa Claus. Like, really? Can we stop already with the color of everything? I mean, yeah, the walls here are purple. Does that affect me? No. I mean, this is getting crazy, and I feel like the mainstream media, liberal news like CNN, they're perpetuating this whole conversation. Why? The color of Santa Claus and the color of Jesus, what does it have to do with you worshiping God and giving some Christmas gifts? Absolutely nothing. The people that talk about this, in my opinion, are weak. Just like we saw at University of Missouri, that whole Mizzou situation with the president stepping down because there were racial incidents on campus. Yes, they should have been addressed. Should a man have stepped down from his position? Absolutely not. It could have been addressed, and it could have been getting media attention so the issue could be addressed. But now he stepped down, and there aren't any solutions. There's nothing happening. People are just marching around and protesting. But now, what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing. So if they're wearing these T-shirts that says "I love my blackness," I love that. That's hilarious. Like, to me, when you wear a T-shirt saying "I love my blackness," that shows your low self-esteem. It shows that you are, whether you know it or not, consciously saying you have a problem with your blackness here in America, and you have to wear a T-shirt to show it. I mean, I'm married and I love my husband. Do I wear a T-shirt that says I love my husband? No, it's a given. I'm black. I love that I'm black. I love who I am. It's a given. So we can maybe stop all of these racial conversations that have nothing to do with one, worshiping God, 2, Santa Claus, getting Christmas gifts, and 3, who we are. To me, if you continue to talk about I'm gonna walk you through some of the meals that we prepare here. So we're making a pizza. We use fresh Italian sausage that is cooked here and sliced up. Our pizza dough is in-house made. Our pizza sauce is in-house made. So everything is fresh and good. This is our Thai curry chicken. The sauce is made with coconut milk and a Thai red curry. It is juicy chicken thighs as well as some mixed vegetables, served with jasmine rice and pita bread. So now we're going to prepare our famous blackened tilapia and grits, our fish and grits on the menu. It's more delicious and our meal will be complete. Let me tell you about our infused beef burgers. So we keep the spice up just a little bit with our infused sauce. We start off with 80/20 USDA ground chuck, ham patty burgers, nice apple pounder burgers, and we're going to grill it to perfection. After I flip the burgers, we add the sauce and let it cook on it until it gets a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of
$6339 Allentown Road, Temple Hills, Maryland 20748 301 499 9000. That's infuse.com. Infuse.com. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want a good meal, if you really want a good meal, stop by Infuse. It's just that simple. It really is. Derek Williams does a wonderful job at the Infuse Restaurant and Lounge. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you back to the Exceptional Conservative Show live from Washington, D.C. We're talking about worldview this week and last week. And in fact, let me just give you the outline of what we're going to be talking about over the next 7 days. Actually, the next 4 days, because some of you all will not be with me, as you all will be celebrating the Christmas holidays. And I do not hold that against you. In fact, guardedly, I say this. I'm very proud of you. Take a little time off. Sometimes a little too much politics is too much for anybody. But we're going to study today, Does God Exist? Number 2 on our week, Tuesday, forgive me. We're going to talk about where we derive our morals from. And on Wednesday, we will talk about moral absolutes. Finally, on Thursday, which I believe is Christmas Eve, we will be talking about why is there suffering in the world. We will also be doing our sneak in of the New Day Black and Red, which is broadcast on WNJC 1360 AM out of Philadelphia, PA, heard in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, and along the world's wide web on Conservative Commandos Radio Network. So we're glad and thankful for your presence tonight and for the rest of this week. For those of you who and if you tune in and you've heard them before, go ahead. That's just a sign from God that maybe you need to be with your family. Does God exist? It's an amazing question in these particular times that we should even ask that. But it's important that we do ask that, because understanding the prescient nature of God, that He is omniscient, omnipotent, ever present, that He is of all things the creator and of all things the judge, the host of your final resting place and its beginning of life. So, ladies and gentlemen, how you see God tells me a lot about what you are willing to project on others as well as to project from yourself. It is much easier to get rid of someone's life at birth when you do not believe in God than it is to believe in God and to pursue abortion. It is much easier to kill someone when you have very little faith. It is easier to treat people like property when you do not recognize they are sons of the living God. And so a lot of people come to me and they say, well, I appreciate, Ken, your faithfulness and what you believe. You know, you're a conservative. And I understand that as a conservative, you have certain principles, and we really respect that. We think that's really nice. And you're also a capitalist, so you believe in people being able to make their own money and save it and buy property. I understand that's wonderful. Precepts and concepts, and I appreciate that. Although you might be a little passe, pretty much archaic in the fact that it is a living and breathing document. You know, every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the founding fathers, kind of thing. So things change, and so you have to adapt to how things change, and so your strict guidelines on the Constitution are they pretty much are condemning to making alterations to the Constitution, you know. But I believe what you believe, and but you get to this Christ thing, you know, and I don't have a problem with you, Ken, believing in a Christ. You know, we all have a Christ to believe in. You know, there's a Christ. You know, there's a Christ at the ATM machine. Oh God, God of the ATM machine. And I pray when I get to it that He knows exactly how much I have in my account and that I can get it out. So I kind of believe what you believe, and it's okay that you believe what you believe, but what you believe kind of infringes on what I believe, and because you you're restricting what I believe, and it's a threat. And I don't think you should say what you believe out loud because it's offensive. You know, but don't get offended that I think you're offensive. Just know that you are offensive and that you should be silent. So if anyone has experienced that, I'm quite certain there are lots of amens in the chat roll in terms of just that. That is what we experience in terms of the whole expectation of a worldview. But I want to take you through some people who may have believed this at one time, but don't believe it anymore, or at least didn't believe it any longer. You see, there are some people that believe that because you cannot reason God, that God does not exist. There are a list of notable converts to Christianity. I know people don't want to talk about them, okay? No, don't want to talk about them at all because they aren't reasonable or rational in thought. And let's just go through some of them. How about Steve Barron? Steve Barron is a former member of the Socialist Workers' Party in the United States, and he went on to become a Christian conservative politician. Uh, does anyone remember well, the teen phenom Kirk Cameron? Yeah, everyone on cover of People's Magazine, and it was a big hit during the 80s, and everyone loved Kirk Cameron. All the girls loved Kirk Cameron. He's just the hottest little hottie that he could ever be. He was Christian actors and apologists in the country. How about Francis Collins? There are lots of homosexuals, lesbians, gays, transgendered, transbobulated, it doesn't matter, whatever, that say that they were born that way, even though of the 23 chromosomes in that setting, no one can find the actual DNA by which that could be observed. And in fact, it has been refuted principally in the world of science. The same scientists that agree with climate change. Yeah, no, not really. They're not. But certainly they are far wiser than those scientists that believe in climate change, all three of them. And so they determine the fact that your genes can tell you basically who you are. One of the foremost scientists in the field of genome, or study of disease genes, happens to be the director of the National Human Genome Research Institute. His name is Francis Collins. Wow, Francis Collins went from being an atheist to being a Christian. A Christian. Bo Gertz, a tremendous Swedish confessional Lutheran bishop, theologian, and writer, made the conversion. Paul Jones, musician of Manfred Mann, he was an atheist, and in 1967 he argued with Cliff Richard about religion on a TV show. He is a Christian. Wow. William J. Murray, the author and son of atheist activist Madalyn Murray O'Hair. Remember the one who worked hard on making certain that abortion was a part of our human culture in the United States of America, and also taking prayer out of public schools. Christianity, before later claiming to have a supernatural encounter with Jesus Christ, which led to his conversion. Finally, I want to go with Simon Greenleaf. Why do I want to go with Simon Greenleaf? Well, to hear his story, one of the main founders of Harvard Law School. He first set out to disprove the biblical testimony concerning the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It was his intent to prove that Jesus did not die the way he did die, and that he died and was buried and no more. There was nothing more to Jesus. After he had written the principles of legal evidence, some of his students challenged him to take his book and apply it to the resurrection of Christ and investigate the reliability of the evidence of Jesus rising from the dead. He accepted the challenge, and after his investigation, he said, There's no better documentation, there's no better documented historical evidence than that for the resurrection of Christ. I am convinced that you can convince any jury in England or America that Christ rose from the dead. All of these great and tremendous converts, all of them who had once said God does not exist. Now, mind you, I'm just a feeble minded urban conservative, not much of thought or deed or expression, not much of spoken, eloquence. I merely fall amongst the poor mustard seeds that fail to make it to the ground in time to be covered with water and God's love that I might bear any increase. But I think, and so I am, I think that there are others who think themselves alone God. You see, I want you to understand something in the world of politics, economics, part of a faith, part of a religion, denomination, and so on. Whatever it is, I want you to understand how you see God directly impacts what you will vote for and what you will accept from your government. The less God in your life, the more government has to take its place. You see, someone has to be the one upon which you can put your confidence and dependence in. It is in human nature for all men to have a trust in something greater than themselves. When we find that that something greater than ourselves is within ourselves, it is easy to put our confidence in ourselves. But what happens when we are flawed? When we say that by 2002, all of the icebergs will have melted and the seas would have risen at least 3 to 10 inches along the shores of the East Coast, virtually paralyzing New York, Baltimore, Chicago, forgive me, Washington, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and so on, virtually making us as close to prehistoric times as ever. Why, you would say that if it did not come to pass as it was said, then we should not believe in this person. Yet that person stood on the floor just a few weeks ago in Paris, thanking everyone for their great work on climate change. Former Vice President Al Gore. How you see God tells me exactly what you believe. And I sat in a church filled with people on Sunday, and even one who preached, who spoke of their confidence in man, in the philosophies. There is not. Why do people do that? This is part 4 of our session on worldview. And probably, if not the most important, certainly ranking amongst them. Let me be very frank with you. The reason why people choose not to believe in a God that is, by all evidence, if you are a rationalist, and by all faith, if you are a religious type, to exist, is because it makes it very easy to do evil and justify it for the sake of seeking to maintain order. that there might be a separate group above all other groups that have a responsibility to look out for the needy, for the poor, and for the hungry. You see, it is very easy to do that. Doing that allows you the privilege of ruling over people rather than serving them. And I want you to write down those particular two words because it is sincerely how you see God that tells me how you see me. When you tell me that you do not believe in God or that God does not have as great a bearing on our lives as you would have it as a political leader, then you're probably telling me without a shadow of a single doubt that you believe in ruling over me rather than serving me. You see, those who are most belligerent about the slave system of America say nothing about the slave systems that exist around the world today. They don't speak about the Muslims that sold black people into slavery here in this country because Muslims are still doing it around the world. So why? Because it is far better to rule than it is to serve. Its own right, uh, and known as the Bible Explorer. Don Stewart says that there are some reasons. In fact, there are four major reasons why people choose not to believe in God. Number one, Don Stewart says that people are running from God. Simply put, I don't want to be accountable to a living God. Not a, and trust me, there is a difference between praying to a rock in the middle of Mecca and praying to the living, breathing God. It is a shame for me when I think of my sins of omission and commission to even desire to be held accountable by my Creator. And yet He has made a pathway for me to go directly to Him and admit my faults and my flaws and ask for His forgiveness and be restored. People that run from God don't want to admit flaws, failures, inaccuracies, spin. It is easier for them to speak a thing away than actually do something about it. It is easier for people to hold a standard for someone else when they're running from God than hold a standard for themselves. In Romans 3, verses 10 and 11, it reads, "There is no one who is righteous, not even one. There is no one who has understanding. There is no one who seeks God." Ladies and gentlemen, those who seek God do not wish to see the truth. Truth is a powerful thing. Truth makes you admit in the middle of your family dinner to your wife that you were wrong for not taking the trash out when she asked you to, and that it wasn't her fault that you didn't take it out. Truth is a marvelous thing. Truth tells a young person who just got another young lady pregnant, that while you may not love her and while you may not marry her, you are still responsible for the baby. You are accountable for the gift that God used, the vessel that God used to create the greatest gift of all in terms of life. How you handle that life tells me how you see the living, breathing God. You see, Don Stewart says that this is an active willingness on the part of people to keep the truth of God from coming to them. Romans 1:18 reads, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of those who by their wickedness suppress the truth." There is someone who argued with me. He's a professor at a historically black college and university today, that Hillary Clinton was absolutely and positively correct when she said that there was video that was being used overseas as a recruitment tool, and that video included Donald Trump speaking evil against Muslims. And that was the tool that ISIS was using to recruit people, to join them in the ranks of treason and abominable ideas and actions. When asked where that video was, just like, I really believe that she needs a Blockbuster card because she's really into videos that don't exist. Regarding that particular video, her press people had to relent. Are ruling the world without God, and you vote for them. Thirdly, people substitute false gods for the real God. Romans 1:19 through 24, Don Stewart refers to, and for those of you who wonder where I get my theme, you might want to take a look at Romans 1. It reads, "For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made. So they are without excuse. For though they know God, they knew God, they did not honor him as God." And I want you to understand, I want to put that in the chat roll, okay? Because it's very important for us to parlay this. They did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking. Rational thinking. Rational thinking. Same thing happened 2,000 years ago that's happening today. People are trying to rationally think God through. I just want to give you a reminder before I go back to the Romans 1:19 through 24 section here, but God did say in Jeremiah that his thoughts were not your thoughts, and his ways were not your ways. In fact, they are higher. So there has to be an ascendancy from thought to faith. But I'll digress and go to that a little bit later on. They did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling a mortal human being, or birds, or four-footed animals, or reptiles, or maybe a big black stone in the middle of Mecca. It doesn't matter. They know that God. So what is egregious? a beauty pageant active from Puerto Rico, Miss Puerto Rico, speaking out against Muslims. Hmm. It's amazing what happens when you speak the truth. You get crushed by the world. It shouldn't be that the Christians are piling on either to help out the world. The fourth thing is they still can know the truth. Don Stewart writes, if anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. John 7:17. That was Jesus. You have to know the truth in order for it to set you free, or him to set you free. But how might I know unless I study? I would venture to say that the majority of most Christians don't pick up their Bible between Sunday and Sunday. And whatever the pastor says exists. Whatever the error is exists. Wherever the fallacy is exists. Whatever the political belief exists. So it's very easy when you don't hold yourself accountable, nor do you study the word to show yourself approved. It's very easy to accept someone who has a world agenda coming into the pulpit and speaking from it to convince you that you're not wrong. Hey, God just wants it all for you the way you want it. Don writes, the Bible says that everyone knows that God exists. However, many people do not acknowledge its existence. In fact, they are running from him. They are willingly and actively rejecting his truth. Although God is speaking to them, they are purposely not listening. Instead of worshiping him, they are substituting false gods in his place. However, the Bible says that everyone still can know the God of Scripture if they are willing to listen. There's a still quiet voice out there that wants to tell you that you can still get this right. When we come back in the second half of the Exceptional Conservative Show, I want to talk with you. Does God exist? I want to thank the good people from High Plains Talk.
Right swipe. It's gonna be a right swipe. This man just shaved his chest hair into a heart. Oh, you stole mine. Right swipe.
Right swipe. Right swipe. It kind of looks like my sister. It does. But I know she's not.
He's cuddling a kitten. Oh my God, I'm gonna eat their faces.
Oh, she's hot.
Oh, wait.
That's a lollipop. Oh, it is not a lollipop. Left swipe.
Left swipe.
Let's swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left.
Yeah.
You gotta swipe it
Let's
left.
swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left. Check the stuff I don't like, so I gotta
Let's swipe that.
look at you with your shirt off, flexing. You're buff, but you puff, hashtag perplexing. Yeah, you worked out, you're in shape, okay. I like the six-pack abs, not the six-packs a day.
Came across a photo of this green-eyed hottie. Home on, pretty face, tight waist, nice body. Hottie just couldn't overlook one small fact.
She smokes like an old man at a racetrack.
And I'm not tired. If you're good and it's out of smoke, I just left swipe, I just left swipe.
Let's swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left.
Yeah.
You gotta swipe it
Let's
left.
swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left. Check the stuff I don't like, so I gotta
Let's swipe that.
Mr. World Traveler, your trips look expensive. expensive. Sitting on a mountaintop looking offensive. I was about to ask, how's the air up there? But based on this pic, I guess you don't really care.
Lots of chicks in the pic, not sure which one's you. Them cigarettes are taking you from 10s to 2s. And one thing's true about your whole crew, none of you cigarella's gonna be my boo.
Smoking with the tiger?
Let's like that.
While you're on a hang glider?
Let's like that. Smoking while acting healthy. Let's like that.
Smoking all stealthy?
Let's like that. Smoking with a duck face. Let's like that.
At a monster truck race?
Let's like that. Smoking at the prom. Let's like that.
Even in a photo bomb?
He don't care. Let's like that.
You gotta swipe their lips.
Yeah.
You gotta swipe their
Let's
lips.
like that.
You gotta swipe their lips. Get the stuff I don't like, so I gotta
Let's like that.
You gotta.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all so much for putting up with all that we are trying to do. Yes, I know the Ustream is whack. I know the live stream is whack. I know it comes flittering in and out throughout the course, but let me explain something to you. We are talking about the most vital subject topic in our conversations over the past 2 weeks. It's about worldview, baby, and the big question is, does God exist? If he doesn't exist, it's easy to be a socialist. If it doesn't exist, if he doesn't exist, it is easy to be a Democrat. If he doesn't exist, it is easy to be a Marxist. If he doesn't exist, it's easy to be a tyrannist or to terrorize. But if he does exist, whoa, kind of hard to be any of those things. Standards just wouldn't allow it. I want to welcome you to the Exception Conservative Show. We are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation first. To the Republican and then the Socialist. Mary Brockman's in the chat room tonight. God bless her soul. She's a beautiful young woman. If you diss her, you diss me, and you will be dismissed. Mrs. Biggs is watching via Ustream live stream. So glad to have her. She's so beautiful. Also, I believe Deborah Blair stopped in for a little bit. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Dan the Man Butcher dropped in as well. A lot of people are dropping in because we're #1 in Washington, D.C. But let's keep it up. You know how we start this. The best way to do it, of course, is the way we do it. Take off your hat. Put your right hand over your heart. And let's get ready to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
to help improve the morale and welfare of members of the armed forces of the United States of America deployed in harm's way. We accomplish our mission by sewing holiday stockings and filling them with special items for the troops. Many of the stockings that we send are for a specific person with their name on the stocking. For many troops, our gift is all they receive for the holidays. We're trying to send a touch of home as well as personal messages of support to remind our troops that we appreciate all they do for us and to let them know that they have not been forgotten over the holidays. We depend on the generosity of others to accomplish this end, of course, our vital mission. Stockings for Soldiers Delaware Incorporated is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Now, wait a minute. As such, donations are deductible to the extent allowed by law. So you're going to have to check with your tax professional to determine if your donation is deductible. However, even if it isn't, please make the donation anyway. Donate to the project. Please send your check to Stockings for Soldiers Delaware Incorporated, 1911 Folk Road, Wilmington, Delaware, 19810. That's 19810. Folk Road is spelled F-O-U-L-K, so make sure that you get that right. Thank you for your assistance. Stockings for Soldiers Delaware Incorporated needs your support, and it helps even after the Christmas holidays to donate, simply because their expenses that are incurred and those things have to be appropriately managed and taken care of. So they really need your support. Make a donation as soon as you can. Ladies and gentlemen, our big topic for today is does God exist? We know him as Jesus the Christ. Mary says, I know God exists. She says, I know this is important. I'm still here, aren't I? Yes, Mary, not saying a single word about you. You are always faithful. However, we are experiencing some technical difficulties. And if we were talking about Donald Trump, do you think I would be experiencing technical difficulties? If I was talking about Hillary Clinton, do you think I would really be experiencing technical difficulties? If I was talking about Obama, that you have to know why you think the way you think, and that you're not just going to be someone who's running around yelling out someone's name that you're following or whatever. You got to have the reasons for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've been studying over the past few weeks, and I'm going to bring it to everyone's attention so you can go back over the files. You can go to our YouTube page to listen to past shows as well as Ustream or the live stream, whichever way. There's lots of opportunities for you to go back and get the information and the studies. But the first thing that we studied last week was what are we? That was on last Monday. On last Tuesday, we talked about were we created or did we evolve? Okay, which says a whole lot about what you vote for and believe. Climate change, evolution, EPA, that kind of thing. On Thursday night, we talked about what our purpose in life is. What is our purpose? And understanding that purpose presents you the motivation to excel and to do all that God has for you. Tonight we're talking about, does God exist? Or is he some imaginary construct of the mind of Ken McClinton? I firmly believe with all of my heart and soul that Jesus does exist, that God does exist. But it's not easy conveying that message to people, especially in times like these. These are the times when people believe without a shadow of a doubt that the only answers come from God. Forgive me, come from Gov. And that's government. And I want you to understand that hopelessness, that sense of hopelessness, isn't doctored. That sense of hopelessness is built on the framework of rulership. there are individuals that seek to rule you. They do not want to help you get to your end. They want to make certain that your end gets to them.
They find the common ground and inspiration for the ideas that birthed America. Join historian David Martin with special guests Glenn Beck, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, and more as they explore the America our founding fathers envisioned.
It's interesting because the Geneva Bible preceded the King James Version by almost 50 years. And if you go in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol and you look at the painting of the Pilgrims coming to America, it is the Geneva Bible.
Governments get so big and out of control, they don't care. There's no accountability.
The other aspect is the only thing it says about government decor is taking justice.
Let's talk about justice and mercy.
The Bible is the number one source. Far and away, more than any other source, the Bible is the most frequently quoted source. So it is a founding document of America, no question.
Well, law is malleable. When it can mean different things, then there's no certainty. People don't know what to do.
So there's no government control at that point, because they can reshape it in anything. As Thomas Jefferson said, it becomes a thing of wax, which they can make anything they want, and it gives more and more control.
What if America's story is bolder, more colorful, and more compelling than we ever imagined? This is Foundations of Freedom.
Ladies and gentlemen, verily, the foundation of your freedom is built on who has the greatest rule in your life. It is easy to say that if Obama has the greatest rule in your life, then all that Obama does is good. And all things that have been done to you are good as well. Despite the circumstances, despite the conditions, despite all the flaws of the individual, somehow, because you have such great faith in Obama, you can't see that there are some stripes that are being caused to you and through you, by you, and unto you. Talking about a theocracy, as in the Republic of Iran, but our founding fathers understood that a moral people could only govern this nation under the current constitution. Only immoral people would be willing to deny God, to alter the constitution, and thus alter the way of life of America. I want to play for you this clip. God and God.
Did you know Dell.com's price match guarantee will match the lowest price?
Really? I didn't know that, and I didn't expect to play that, so I do apologize to those who are listening at home. Not my intent.
Their decree, their law, their judgment that homosexual marriage should be accepted in every state in this country. And maybe you're here today and you're happy about the decision. And maybe some of you are disgusted. Maybe some of you don't know which way to go. And I understand that. I want to talk to all three people. And I want to say something very clearly. Hear me now. The United States Supreme Court does not make decisions based on the Bible. You understand that? They make decisions based on the Constitution of the United States. They're reading what the Constitution allows and they're making a decision accordingly. However, that being said, they have sincerely forgotten that our Constitution was framed by our founders specifically for a religious and moral people. John Adams said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Abraham Lincoln said this in 1864. The Bible is the best gift God has ever given to man. Without it, we could not know right or wrong. All things most desirable for man's welfare, here and hereafter, are to be found portrayed in the Scriptures. Now, our Constitution is going to say things and not say things, and the Supreme Court is going to decide, listen to me very carefully, what you and I have a right to do. But hear me now, the Supreme Court of the United States has no power and nothing to do with the consequences of your rights if you act on them. They can give you the rights, and you can act on the rights, but when the consequences come to bear, the court is powerless. That being said, this decision should not surprise that the unborn child feels pain. But they gave us the right, and people are acting on it. This is the same Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen, that decided in 1964 that pornography was a freedom of speech. And now, decades later, we are feeling and experiencing the horrific results of pornography on the male brain and the female brain and the family. And study after study after study shows us, point in fact, that the sex trafficking industry is fed by the pornographic industry in this country. There's a simple correlation there, because when you make a market for sex, people will take advantage of that market and exploit it and destroy lives as a result of it. Do you understand that the average age for a young girl getting involved in the pornographic industry in this country is 13? I have a 13-year-old daughter. That scares the life out of me. And right now in America, there is 100,000 child sex slaves in the home of the free. And every time you click on a site, you're helping the problem. Sean Carew, who works for the Providence Rescue Mission, runs the Providence Rescue Mission. He comes and preaches here on a regular basis. Love the guy. What a man of God. Do you know that the last time he came to preach, he was exhausted on Sunday mornings? You know why he was so exhausted? Because he was hunting down a sex trafficking ring that had gotten a hold of one of his women's daughters. He is fighting the consequences of what the Supreme Court said was right 40 years ago. So though they can give us the right, I just want to let you know, they can do nothing about the consequences of you acting on those rights. And every nation on earth, in the history of the earth, has always thought that they were smarter than God about something, and has always paid the price. And America will be no different. What about gay marriage? What's wrong with that, Pastor? Isn't that just love wins, love wins? Isn't that just love? Are we just fighting against love? No, friend. Everything that we do has consequences. And right now we have the freedom for gay people to get married, but nothing is going to heal and solve the consequences that are going to come. You don't have to be very smart to understand that a child needs a mommy and a daddy. That if Cheryl was ever taken out of the picture of my children's lives, my parents have said, your kids would be up a creek. My children need my wife. She balances me out, and I balance her out, and we work at it together. So you want to be a rocket scientist to understand that children thrive when mommy and daddy lay down their own personal comfort and desires for the children. What we're living in is a culture that is obsessed with personal happiness at the expense of everybody else. And listen to me, your happiness is not the priority. And if you came to Christ, your happiness is not God's priority. Your health, your success, your blessing, and the blessing of your children is the priority, because it's no longer about you. It's about the glory of God in the face of Christ Jesus. I understand you hear the arguments. Yes, I understand. It's on every television station, in every movie, in every secular university in this country. You are looking at the last line of defense with these standards. When I have an obligation to say something, you're more than welcome to disagree with me, but I honestly ask you to respect our disagreement. It's still the land of the free. And we believe not the Constitution, but the Scriptures of the living God are the pathway to life, health, and blessing in Jesus Christ. And there is no better way to live. We will never hate homosexuals in this church. We welcome them with open arms, but we have the opportunity and the responsibility to tell them, here's what God's word says for your good, for your health, for your safety and protection. And you can, according to the Supreme Court, go your own way. But let me just tell you, when the ways of the world chew you up and spit you out, I want you to know that the Church of Jesus Christ will be waiting here with arms wide open to welcome you in and see you healed and made whole in the power of Jesus Christ.
And constitutionalism and conservatism and Christ. Um, when we get into debates with them, they often start off the way we started tonight's show. You know, I really believe what you believe, but there's always a but at the very end of the conversation. The but of the matter is that outside of God's will, I can exact law. You might want to divert to the Pharisees, and we're going to talk about a certain Pharisee who had to give up a whole lot in order to convert. But I digress. There is this concept that I won't have to pay a price if people approve of what I do. You see, and the only way that I can get this approval is not from the firm handshake of my father, not from the sincere hug of my mother, not from the support of the religious leaders and community leaders or neighborhood leaders or economic leaders or educational leaders. The only way that I can do this is by altering the law. Bastiat, remember? Altering the law that I might receive subsidy and great feeling of support. And that the law cannot merely be one of approval of me and me alone. I must be able to impact every part of the culture with my law. You see, we are a very gracious and benevolent people. And we will bend over backwards to make sure that people don't feel offended, don't feel hurt. We want the best for everybody. We want people to be happy. The unfortunate thing is that pursuit of happiness was not about whether you felt something, but whether you owned something. Unfortunately, by changing and altering infinite destruction. You know, the gentleman who was speaking at Waters Church had behind him the scripture, and it came from the Leviticus chapter 25, and I want to direct you to a scripture there. And it says, for they are, this is verse 42 and 43 of the 25th chapter of Leviticus, and I'll be reading from the King James. It says, for they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondsmen. Thou shalt not rule over him with vigor, but shall fear thy God. The beginning of all wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Doing that which is right in your own eyes is the beginning of destruction. The Supreme Court can make changes. Our Congress can make changes to the laws. Our president can even by executive order create law. We're still working against that one, but apparently he still can because this Congress won't do anything about that. In either case, all of them by their supernatural power to create legislation have accosted mankind. How so, you ask? Men are beginning to feel that there will be no consequences for their actions. No one will get hurt, and people will love me and respect me. The question tonight where we are not ashamed of the good news of conservatism, for it is the power of liberation, first to the Republican and then the Democrat. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Christopher Arnold. I'm the executive chef of the Chicken Restaurant, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the meals that we prepare here. So we're making a pizza. We use French Italian sausage that they cook here and slice it up. Our pizza dough is an in-house made. Our pizza sauce is in-house made. So everything is fresh and good. This is our Thai curry chicken. The sauce is made with coconut milk and the Thai red curry. It is juicy chicken thighs as well as some mixed vegetables, served with jasmine rice and pita bread. So now we're going to prepare our famous blackened tilapia and grits, our fish and grits on the menu. And our meal will be complete. Let me tell you about our infused beef burger. So we keep the spice up just a little bit with our infused sauce. We start off with 80-20 USDA ground chuck ham patty burgers, like half a pound of burgers, and we're going to grill it to perfection. After I flip the burger, we add the sauce and let it cook on into the meat just a little bit. We're going to add a little bit of pepper jack cheese to this burger to spice it up a bit. All right.
Gonna be a right swipe. This man has shaped his chest hair into a heart. Oh, you stole mine. Right swipe.
Right swipe, right swipe.
That kind of looks like my sister.
It does.
But I know she's not.
He's cuddling a kitten.
Oh my God, I want to eat their faces.
Oh, she's hot.
Oh, wait a minute. No.
That's a lollipop. Oh, that is not a lollipop. Left swipe.
Left swipe.
Let's swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left.
Yeah.
You gotta swipe it
Let's
left.
swipe that.
You gotta swipe it left. This is stuff I don't like, so I gotta
Let's swipe that.
look at do with your shirt off, flex it. You're buff, but you puff, hashtag complexity. Yeah, you work out, you're in shape, okay. I like the six-pack abs, not the six-packs a day.
Came across a photo of this green-eyed hottie, whole nine, pretty face, tight waist, nice body. But I just couldn't overlook one small fact.
She smokes like an old man at a racetrack.
This must be some kind of joke. You think you're not tired, and I'm not tired. If you're good in a cloud of smoke, I just left white, bye-bye. I just left white.
Let's swipe that.
Swipe, you gotta swipe it left.
Yeah.
You gotta swipe it
Let's
left.
swipe that.
Swipe, you gotta swipe it left. This is stuff I don't like, so I gotta
Let's swipe that.
Mr. World Traveler, your trips look expensive. Sitting on a mountaintop looking all offensive. I'm about to ask, how's the air up there? But based on this pic, I guess you don't really care.
Lots of chicks in the pic, not sure which one's you. Them cigarettes are taking y'all from 10s to 2s. And one thing's true about your whole crew, none of you cigarella's gonna be my boo.
Smoking with the tiger?
Let's swipe that.
While you're on a hang glider?
Let's swipe that. Smoking while acting healthy. Let's swipe that.
Smoking all stealthy?
Let's swipe that. Smoking with a duck face. Let's swipe that.
At a monster truck race?
Let's swipe that. Smoking at the prom. Let's swipe that.
Even in a photo bomb?
He don't care. Let's swipe that.
Swipe, you gotta swipe it left.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you back. Thank you to the Exceptionally Considered Show live from the nation's capital. Does God exist? I believe he does. But I'm not alone. There are millions, billions of people that believe that God exists. But there are some that do not believe in a living God. I'm going to refer to godisimaginary.com. Godisimaginary.com. And I love these great people there because they basically want to convince you that God does not exist. Okay? And hey, it's your job, right? Here it is. God. If you think about it, you will realize that there is no difference between God and leprechauns. Lots of people talk about God as though he exists, but there is no actual evidence for God's existence. And there should be, because there are many positive claims in the definition of God. For example, God has never left any physical evidence of his existence on earth. Really? All historical gods were imaginary, and we know it. None of Jesus' miracles left any physical evidence either. God has never spoken to modern man. For example, by taking over all the television stations and broadcasting a rational message to everyone. The resurrected Jesus has never appeared to anyone in a provable way. The Bible we have is provably incorrect. It is obviously the work of primitive men rather than God. Isn't it? And here's a big one. Huge. Amazing atrocities like the Holocaust and AIDS occur without any response from God. You see, and this is why this is so important to discuss. Does God exist? Because what we have, instead of having apologists for God, we have those that apologize for God. Yes, we have crafted the ability to apologize for not answering forthrightly from His Word. A lot of people think that God's responsibility when He came through Christ Jesus was to heal all the sick people, make certain all the poor were fed and clothed, and to make certain that the imbalances between the rich and the poor were made straight, and there would be no more imbalances, and everyone would share the same gifts, and we will all sing Kumbaya. That there will never be another atrocity in life. Amazing that they don't see the death of Christ as an atrocity that both Jew and Gentile participated in. Oh, but then again, Jesus does exist to be criticized, but does not exist to be glorified. They compare the leprechaun to God. And because the leprechaun is a mythical apportionment of men's wizardry, they believe that also God was created. I remember there was a great philosopher who said that if there was no God, we would create a reason to create one. Rational. Oh, rational people. You see, rational thinkers you see, rationality is built on reasoning, in fact. And the Latin rationalitas speaks to the fact that able-bodied persons reason or are reasonable in terms of. Thank you, Deborah. I know you're still here. I know. Uh, you have to be able to rationalize. It has to be an acceptable reason. You say, apparently, it was impossible for Hillary to deal with the ambassador in Tripoli, whatever, Bengali, it was impossible for her to deal with him, simply because there were so many airplanes that were so far away, and so many naval and airmen and other military personnel that were so far away, and it was impossible to get any help to them. So, it's understandable and it's reasonable. Most men can reason lies, but they cannot understand the truth. The sense that you have to be rational in the graces of men defies exactly the purposes for thought. You see, reason, or the ability to do so, has a great dependency on intellectual faculty, and we have actually trained those who vote to believe with all of their heart that there are the only way that you can actually lead by serving is to make certain that you are the smartest person, that you've gone to the most acclaimed institutions of the learned, and then the concept of intellectual faculty belies the truth. You see, remember the Harvard University School of Law founder who said that after reviewing all of the evidence, there was no doggone way that you could ever say, number one, that Jesus did not exist, and then number two, that he did not die on the cross. All the evidence points that way. But it's not reasonable. Why would a God so love the world that he would come off his throne to become the acceptable propitiation unto men, of acceptable propitiation of men unto God, die upon a cross, buried in a tomb, return on the third day, ascend on the day of Pentecost, and pledge his eternal love and affection for so wicked a creature as us? That defies everything. You see, it doesn't fit my opinion. It doesn't fit my thought process. It doesn't fit my speech. It doesn't fit my language, my subject matter, my course, my reason. It doesn't fit. And likened unto the attorney who said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. I've quit thinking about God because God doesn't exist. If God existed, then my life wouldn't be so bad. If God existed, then I could have my own way. If God existed, there would be no sick people. If God existed, there would be no poor people. If God existed, all men would be free. Really? Really? You believe that? To reason like that defies the ultimate truth. Not only did God so love you that he came to become propitiation for your sins, but by choice. I want you to understand something about faith. I'm going to put this in the chat room for everyone to understand. When you have come to the end of yourself, then you will know God. When you have come to the end of yourself, then you will know God. The whole idea about faithfulness is to be able to put your trust, your confidence in a promise given to you by someone who not only has done it, but can do it and will do it. And in addition to that, is the only one who is able to do it. Confidence, trust, faith, reliance. Someone played a clip today on my Facebook page and stated that this was the reason why people have given up on the church. And it was about a pastor who had built a great mansion and had many cars and was fleecing the congregants of their wealth, proposing that he was using it for the profound nature of solving the poverty question, which Jesus solved some 2,000 years ago when he said, the poor shall always be with you when you would do them good. But just in case you liberals didn't figure this one out, you will never solve the poverty crisis until you solve your God crisis. You see, they had put their trust, their blind trust, in a pastor. They had put their blind trust in the reputation of a church. They had put their blind trust in what it meant to protect the four walls. The truth of the matter is, they played blindly. They didn't want to ask questions. They just wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And there are people out there that want to take advantage of that. You bring what you have into what is, and then things are to be accepted just the way they are. Let me give you an example, and I want to go to Paul so that you have a better understanding of why God does exist and why faith beats reason on any given day, on any given football field. I want to talk with you about Saul for a moment. Saul, who became Paul. And there are too many of you who do not understand. You honor and worship Paul at times, although he is the profound writer of most of the New Testament as it is canonized. Somehow, Paul has become more important than Jesus. We need to work on that. But I want you to understand where Paul came from. Paul was not always Paul. In fact, Paul was once called Saul of Tarsus. Saul was a brilliant man. I mean, an incredibly brilliant man. He was born around AD 5, okay, which puts him at about the same age as Jesus the Christ. Okay. He was born in Tarsus in Sicilia, which is modern-day Turkey. He was born to Jewish parents who possessed Roman citizenship, and thus he was a Roman citizen. It was a privilege to be a Roman citizen. When you are the big dog in the world, it is always a privilege to be a part of it, I suppose. About AD 10, Saul moved from Turkey, present-day Turkey, which is Tarsus, to Jerusalem. It was around about 15 to 20 AD that Saul began his studies of the Hebrew scriptures in the city of Jerusalem under Rabbi Gamaliel. Paul was known for taking a rather lenient view of the Old Testament law in contrast to his contemporary Rabbi Shammai, who held to a more stringent understanding of Jewish tradition. You see, Rabbi Hillel would not have really been proud of Rabbi Gamaliel because he wasn't as strict. But nevertheless, Gamal, being under the famous Rabbi Hillel, he was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was a brilliant one. And some looked upon him as the Messiah, although he vehemently opposed such thinking. In fact, he is mentioned several times in the scriptures as a very famous and well-respected teacher. Gamal, in the Acts chapter 5, okay, is meeting with the Sanhedrin. And John and Peter are standing trial before the Sanhedrin. It seems that if you are a Christian, you will someday stand trial before someone who doesn't share your opinion. After having warned the apostles to cease preaching in the name of Jesus, the Jewish council became infuriated with Simon Peter, defiantly replying, "We must obey God rather than human beings." Peter had no intention of ceasing to proclaim the gospel, regardless of the possible repercussions. Peter's defiance enraged the council, who began to seek the death penalty. Yes! Take away the First Amendment if you can. Not that it existed, but I'm just laying it out there. Into the fray steps Gamaliel, the rabbi who was honored by all the people. He was the rabbi of rabbis. He was the it. And he said, "In the present case, I advise you, leave these men alone. Let them go. For if their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. you will only find yourselves fighting against God. Those words would later come back to haunt someone named Saul of Tarsus, who was kicking against the prick. You see, Saul was a and the conversion from Judaism to Christianity, probably in the history of the scriptures. Acts 7:54 through 60. Some people would challenge me on that, but I dare the challenge. Acts 7:54 through 60. He spoke and then was killed as one of the first Christian martyrs. Luke writes of the fact that he fell at the feet of his executioners, where laid the garments at the feet of Saul. He was in approval of the mob's murderous actions. You see, later that would come to bear much dissatisfaction between his conversion to Christianity and the original apostles. Saul was an anti-Christian zealot. He would not only just have men in prison, he would have them beaten. He locked up female believers as well. He called for the assassination of the leaders of the Christian faith. And he had garnered the permission of Gamaliel, who had tutored him, who had trained him, who had raised him to be the next Pharisee. Saul was intended to be the next Gamaliel. He was supposed to be the it. He was intellectually superior to any apostle who stood before him. He was intellectually more superior to even the Jews that stood before him. He was a brilliant man who had much reason, and he acted on his reason, and by his reasoning, he had deciphered that it was the greatest offense against God that there would be people like Peter and Paul, Peter and James and John. So he was going after them. And on his way to Damascus, he ran into a name changer. I want to take you to Acts chapter 9, verse 3 through 9. I want to read that to you. Now as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven shone around him. And falling to the ground, he heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do. The men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice but seeing no one. Saul rose from the ground, and although his eyes were open, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And for 3 days he was without sight, and neither ate nor drank. God is real. And he changed the man who persecuted the early Christians, the ones that Jesus saw as himself. He saw the murder of Stephen. He was aware of who Saul of Tarsus was. But he had come towards a judgment, an opportunity to change, and he accepted. I want you to understand what he put down before I leave you. Number one, individually, he was the it. When Rabbi Gamaliel was to pass away, Saul of Tarsus would have been that rabbi who took his place. He was individually superior intellectually than most of the other philosophers of his day. He put away his personal honors and achievements, and even his own virtual gifts of mental acuity and reason, and he laid those down at the altar. Family. He was an esteemed Roman citizen. That was not something that was just given to Jews. He put his family crest down. Neighbors knew of him as Saul of Tarsus. They reveled at his great abilities, that he was merciless, that he was a great warrior. They loved Saul of Tarsus, and he defied his neighbors to tell them about Jesus. Economically, he was without a doubt probably one of a most wealthy lot, and he threw that all away so that he would study for 3 years in the Arabian desert to know better this Jesus the Christ. His education we spoke of earlier, a brilliant man. His brilliance so great that he wrote the majority of the New Testament. The government, the Sanhedrin, he had to defy later on and actually stand against it. He put away his ideological bent to follow Jesus. Everything the lenient rabbi would allow, he had to fight against later on in his life. And then finally, faith. I know and I celebrate and encourage people to celebrate Hanukkah. What a wonderful story of the Maccabees and the faith of many. But he had to convert from Judaism to the faith of Jesus Christ. There is prophecy that will come to pass for the Jews in the time of the second coming of Christ. He had to put it all down. He laid it all down. He laid it all down that he might find the that we overcome this world. It is by his faith, the author and the finisher of it, that we follow his word to institute his will amongst men. In order for us to reign again with justice and with mercy, we need to lay down our ideologies and follow him. And for those of you who wonder, is conservatism an ideology? It is not. It's a way of life. One closely apportioned to someone named Jesus. A man once told me, Never walk in fear. Do not die a coward. Always live bravely. I promise you I always will. From those of you who tuned in and listened, I apologize for all of the flaws, but I promise you we will come out swinging again tomorrow night on our subject matter of worldview. Remember, God blessed America. Now it's time for America to bless God. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow night.